So tax avoidance, tax evasion that facilitate the illicit outflow of capital can be, if we deal with it, can be a way of addressing and broadening, harvesting resources to broaden growth.
Let's move it on. Let's start there and then move the mic around. Yeah, we'll start with you, sir.
Hi, my name is Scott Wallace. I'm with the Wallace Global Fund, which is a foundation in the US that operates in Africa. As funders, a frustration is we have these great goals, but not much of the money is going there, and shouldn't we be paying more attention to the obstructions in the stream and the people who would divert the stream, empowering citizens to demand that the stream get to where it's supposed to go? What's the balance that we as funders must strike between our hopes and dreams and the people who would play mischief with them?
Ma'am, are you ready?
Yes, I am. My name is Halila from Kenya, representing Akiba Ohaki. My question was around education. We advocate for education of youth, but is this education really modern? Is it demand-driven education, or are we educating youth for things that don't exist? Can this be changed? And secondly, have we moved towards capitalistic kind of economy to the extent that we don't care about the social issues? Is it time maybe to have a capitalistic versus communist economy that is hybrid, that then works on wealth distribution? Because in majority of the continent, about 90% of the country resources is in 10% of the population, while 90% of the population only has access of 10% of the resources.
Let's have your final thoughts on this as we wrap up.
I think the first place I'm going to start on is the question of education. For me, education is fundamentally about human dignity. It is not about jobs. It is only secondarily about jobs. It is about being able to recognize where you are in the world and where the world is and where the planet is and where the universe is going. That is what education is about. And so it needs to open all our children's minds to that world. Similarly, I think living in this contemporary world, we cannot exclude our children from the best technological education. We cannot. But at the same time, we have to strike the balances in understanding that demography, population growth has changed significantly, and that when economies grow, they will have to look at how we provide services for people. And that's what economies will have to do. When it comes to who is included, I think we must ask the question differently. I think we must say that our job here is to facilitate people to mobilize at community level, to resist all forms of oppression, but particularly to say to our governments, we want to know what that growth is. And are you taxing the companies who are benefiting from that appropriately, fairly? Are government bureaucrats paying their taxes fairly? So for me, the question is about building citizens' power, building education, and harmonizing our laws on the continent to allow for economic growth across the continent and intertrade within the continent, so that it is not simply a service economy for either North America or Europe, or a service economy for China, India, and so on.
Thank you very much, sir. Your final remarks and responses to the questions.
One of the criticisms of the MDGs was that they were crafted behind gray walls in Washington by the UN, the IMF, the World Bank, and the OECD. Abstracting from the Millennium Declaration, people were not part of shaping these priorities, and so at the very beginning, when they were rolled out, many of us had resistance, and many governments were reluctant to implement them until they found a way. The reason for launching the discussion about what to succeed the MDGs after 2015 is to provide a space for these conversations. These conversations will necessarily have to be at multiple levels. to deal with some of the questions that have been raised here. How do we ensure that we are developing strategies of development that both promote democracy and development simultaneously? These are big questions that only us can answer on a country-by-country level and at our continental level.
Thank you very much for your contribution. Hespina.
On who decides, I think I would say who decides what. The voices of the poor, I think many of the things that people have to say, at least in many countries they've said, we know what they need, we know what is needed, we know what is wanted. I think we are afraid to go to the next step. Decide what? Implementation, I don't think that needs a UN trip to go and decide implementation. And then the whole issue of consultations, national consultation, under normal circumstances, one would assume that when my president goes to New York, at least he has heard from his people, but obviously that doesn't always happen. So I don't know whether it's going to happen in the next 18 months before 2015. The issue of relevant education, I think most of what we teach kids today is not relevant to where we want to go. So we won't be surprised, or we shouldn't be surprised if 20 years from now, we can't use them or that education for anything that we'll be doing then.
Well, that brings us to the end of yet another edition of Africa 360. We would like to thank the Southern Africa Trust and the African Grantmakers Network for having organized that very captivating dialogue. I really enjoyed facilitating that session. Please join us next week as we bring you another dialogue, this time focusing on trade relations between Africa and Asia. So make sure you don't miss that upcoming edition of your program, Africa 360. If you'd like to leave a comment or join the debate on Africa, you can, as usual, find us on Facebook, or you can follow us on Twitter, or drop us an email on africa360@enca.com. And remember, you're more than welcome to give us suggestions on topics you'd like us to cover on your program, Africa 360. So, until next time, when we look forward to bringing you Africa like you've never seen it before, do take care.